Y is recorded in front of a live studio audience.
Why? I mean, I understand why there's Wonka brand for people to buy in the general public, but
Sure.
isn't it maybe not the best branding to have out there? Because, he killed a lot of kids.
And the enslavement of the Oompa Loompas.
That too.
Yeah. I Again, it's that thing people overlook, you know?
I mean,
Scrooge all of a sudden is loved at the end. Everyone can't wait to see the Grinch next Christmas. But they were not nice guys.
nope, nope.
And I guess, I mean, by the end of the story, Charlie has taken over. So I guess he
Well,
is this
true.
is this Wonka's way of just sort of laundering his guilt through one more person to just have it come out clean on the other end,
Do you
you
say like
know?
Wonka as made by Charlie?
Exactly. Sort of like a, listen, you run the business. I'm going to go to my place in Tahiti, which is probably staffed by Oompa Loompas, let's be
Mm-hmm.
honest.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think when he goes swimming, he has like, I'm thinking purple velvet, like Speedos, and he's still wearing the stupid hat.
Probably.
So not only are Oompa Loompas working there for free, they got to see that every day coming
Right.
out of the pool,
Precisely.
slipping into his Wonka Crocs. But I think it's his way of just laundering all of that. Like Charlie can be like, hey, I didn't do this. Dude before me
Mm.
did. They're here. We're paying them. Is it a living salary? Like, I think, what do you think pays better? Amazon warehouse employee or Oompa Loompa?
Mm.
Because I feel like at best, they're running neck and neck.
I think so. I think that's right.
And frankly, if the Oompa Loompas have to pee in water bottles throughout the
Yeah.
get health and
Yeah.
I want to see that A plastered on their door,
I
but no one's allowed to
agree.
go in.
I know. It's a mystery.
I mean, frankly, they could be having just chocolate pouring over dead Oompa Loompas and just
But at least
right.
it's chocolate.
I know, but like, there's Violet.
I like crumble.
Well, I was gonna say Violet Beauregard.
But yeah, Violet Beauregard, but
I mean,
still.
let's be honest. She is in a bar somewhere. Someone has eaten her,
Oh, for
right?
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And again, we're just supposed to look the other way and act like this is normal.
Well, I mean, we've eaten all kinds of other shit.
I
What's a
know,
little?
but it just sort of seems like child should be a red flag for anybody. Child should be a big stop sign to stop and
It's not
think
really
about
in
some
my diet.
choices.
I like
Exactly.
just regular sugar.
Chocolate. Right.
Right.
And again, at best, the various cleaning and processing processes that they have in place at the Wonka factory filter out all of those impurities.
Right.
But whose word are you going to take? The health inspector or the guy with the big dumb hat saying, "Don't worry, everything's fine."
The big dumb hat guy.
Yeah, everyone's going with
I,
big dumb hat
I
guy.
mean, I don't really trust the health inspector either.
Yeah, but I trust him more than big dumb hat guy.
I don't know. I don't really trust anybody.
I know, but he's enslaving a
I know, but it's like
entire
they're both problematic, let's be
people's.
honest.
Yeah, oh, yes. What, this health inspector and Wonka? No, listen, nobody walks away here with clean hands. No pun intended.
No, right, because the health inspector is not really doing what he should do either, at least in this particular scenario.
Right.
I mean, I
There's
think
been
some
what?
health inspectors are fantastic, but
Right.
this
But there's
particular one,
been
not so great.
there's been three Willy Wonka movies, correct?
Correct.
You know what I do not believe I've seen in any one of those films?
A health
A
inspector.
glove, frankly.
Yeah, I
Oompa
don't think
Loompas
so
are not
either.
pulling on gloves. I mean, maybe
Nope.
they've got their white cotton ones that match the overalls, but that's a uniform. That's not a.
Yeah, that's not a real glove. And those aren't clean gloves. Those are
Oh
like
God,
felt, they
no. Oh
hold
my God.
everything.
They've got gobstopper and chocolate and oh my, it's so much.
Body parts,
Yeah, die number threes on
DNA.
that. Oh my,
Hmm.
so much DNA. Green hair. You're gonna
Oh
find a green
God.
hair. Yeah,
Oh,
it's happening.
everywhere.
That is happening.
There's all kinds of stuff.
This is Why, with your hosts, Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling.
What is the point of a referee in a boxing match? Because some people, not me obviously, other people might say that the only thing you need to do when refereeing that sweet science is to make sure no one gets punched in the crotch.
No, it's actually, there's so many factors that go into it. With the number one concern, or the number one reason they have a boxing referee is because of safety. There's more aspects than you can imagine. We don't only protect the fighters from each other, but we got to protect them from the promoters, the matchmakers, their own corner, and from themselves, because sometimes they're such unbelievable warriors. They're done. They can't win mathematically. They haven't landed a punch, and we're there to protect them, from themselves. We have managers and promoters and matchmakers who want to make money and want to put on fights. So sometimes they're less than above board with the matches, and we get stuck with some pretty good mismatches. And guys at the end of their career, I can go on forever, so stop me. We have
No,
the
please.
phenomena that guys at the end of their career are looking for their one big shot again, and they end up fighting a young beast who they shouldn't be fighting. A 36-year-old guy, 38-year-old guy fighting a 22-year-old undefeated ex-Olympian, and they get thrashed, and we're there to protect them too. So it's not just that. We're also there to enforce the rules like you were talking about, so nobody's cheating and no one's taking advantage of the other person with illegal tactics. We're also there for control, not only of the bout, but everything about the bout that goes with their safety. But we look after the judges, because a lot of times they're getting smashed by the photographers. The big lens goes in front of their face. They can't see, and they're stuck in that seat. So when we're picking up the cards, if they're having a problem, we got to deliver it to the inspector in the corner and say, hey, remove that photographer. Another instance is, the booms. Oh, you guys know, you're in the movie industry. The booms. We've had these idiot guys that are working these booms. I'd say worse, but I don't know you guys.
Oh, no, you can.
Usually, so the ring is, 20 by 20, say, right? And these guys have actually multiple times broke the plane of the ropes and had the camera in the ring and have hit referees in the head. Fighters got hit with the boom. And we had an incident last year, 2 years ago, where a guy did it. The inspector went over to him and said, hey, man, you can't do that. He turned around and said, well, I don't work for you. I work for this company. And they said, well, you're going to learn real quick. You do work for us. And he was banned from California, and he had to come back with his tail between his legs, write a letter and appear before the commission and apologize and stuff like that. But people just, how photographers are, they'll do anything for the money shot. So we got to protect them from that. And then we're also there to help to ensure that the fans get a fair fight, because I can't tell you how many guys in my career I've seen go down in the ring and I never saw a punch. They were in there for a payday. They wanted there might be an opponent. They might have been, their record was 6-18, losing record 6-30, whatever it is. And they went in for a payday. They tried to make it look good, but they really never got hit. So we're there to make sure the fans are getting, what they're paid for as well.
Okay, that's a lot. And I love boxing.
Sorry.
Like
Cut
I've
it down to whatever you
boxed,
want.
like I've boxed not for real box, but boxed like for fun, sparred and all that. Like that
You're
is,
from Detroit, right?
I am, of course.
Hey, Kronk Gym, man.
Oh my
You're
God.
the best place in the world.
Of course. Yes, absolutely. And we, as fighters, whether we do it amateur, or as pros, there's a lot we have to know and have going on in our heads to know the strategy, to know not to hit, not get hit, know what our opponents are thinking, know all those things. But that is about what you just listed off is about 10 more things than the 150 things we have to keep in our heads. Like that is insane. So how does a ref have all those things in their brain? Is that just someone that you intrinsically have that you then can train someone to do that? Are you born with it? Or can you literally take someone from scratch and teach them how to be able to manage all that at once. Like that's eyes in the back of your head, on the side of your ears, like
Yeah.
I mean, that's 8 billion things at once.
Yes, and you got to have a passion for it. If you're not going to be totally involved, you're going to fail. And the greatest thing about combative sports in general, it exposes everybody. Sooner
Right.
or later, fighters who promoters put in the ring and pump them up with horrible opponents, they meet their match and they fizzle out. The good ones stay, but everybody gets exposed. Executive officers, inspectors, referees, judges. Everybody involved with this sports gets exposed because when you least expect it, spotlight is on you in a critical moment and you got to put up or shut up. So
Yep.
I'm telling you, this is a study. This isn't, I'm coming out of like a swag.
Right.
When we take a person that has a love of boxing, but had no prior experience refereeing, we could actually mold that person into a better referee than if they had experience in the amateurs. If they've been in the amateurs too long, their muscle reflex, their rote memory is too much ingrained in the amateur type. And let me tell you something, it's two different sports.
Yeah.
And the difference, the best analogy I can give you is, because I've had to do this multiple times with arrogant officials that come from the amateurs, is there's a difference between Major League Baseball and Major League Softball.
Sure.
It's two different sports.
Of
The
course.
pitching is different. The way a ball comes in is different. Everything is different about it. One is really for big money and one, it's not big money. It's more enjoyment or whatever, but the speed and the velocity and the ferocity of the professional boxing is totally different than amateur. And a lot of the minor league guys, the amateur officials, they never can cut it because they can't get out of their own way. They over officiate because they're used to calling everything in the amateurs, and in professional, if it's no harm, it's no foul. If you're over officiating, you're stopping a beautiful contest. And you got to know I think the most important thing of a boxing official, or one of them, is to know what to ignore, know what to not make a hard case on. And just like with your kids, you don't, if your kids are doing something that's bothering you, you don't jump up and start screaming at them. It's progressive discipline. And it's the same thing in the ring. But amateurs, they go from A to Z on every warning, in my opinion.
So how did you get into the sport? Were you a boxer yourself? Was it always just a love of the sport, love of watching it, the intricacies, the mental and physical challenges of boxing?
So growing up, my dad passed away when I was 8 years old. But in my house, before that, there was pictures of him. I have one on the wall I can show you,
Mhm.
of him in a boxing stance in 1928. I got pictures of him with great champions, in the 20s, and I never heard what it was all about. But he encouraged us to play fight with each other all the time. And my brother and I used to put socks on our hands and box in the house on a snowy day. And I've always had a love for boxing. And then I loved the sport, and I was getting older, and I was playing ice hockey, travel hockey. And I was going into a league that was, I was 15 and a half, and I was going into a league that was from 16 to 20 years old. And some of those 20-year-old guys, they're big
That's a
men.
leap.
I
Yeah.
wanted to learn how to, physically handle myself. And the only boxing gym near me was Gleason's gym, but it was a 30-plus-minute train ride from my house to Gleason's each way. And my mom absolutely refused to allow me to go through on the train 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night to and from from the gym through
Mhm.
these neighborhoods that I'd be fighting my way home. So I found a local martial arts studio with a guy who's he's unbelievable. Louis Negley, he feeds the UFC with a lot of guys that fight in the UFC. He's very close with Dana White and stuff like that. And I took martial arts, and I was a amateur full contact kickboxer, and I did some boxing matches. The last fight I had was when I was 30 years old. I boxed LAFD. I was a fireman 31 years. So I boxed the LAFD in the Battle of the Badges against the sheriffs and the police. And
How'd you do?
what's that?
How'd you do?
I won. Oh, it was nice.
Okay,
I
perfect.
got
Yeah.
dropped. I got dropped. I got up. I said, no, I wasn't a knockdown, but it was. And I always loved the sport, and I don't know why, but something in my head, I really knew as a young guy that I wasn't competitive enough. I wasn't good enough to actually be a pro fighter. At 23, I realized that, but I always thought about being a ref. And from the time I was 30, I really wanted to do it, but I talked myself out of it. How are you going to get in? You don't know anybody, all these things. And at about 37, I started going after it. I changed that and started making phone calls and poking myself into places.
What made
So
you decide to do it at 37?
I missed it. I was getting older. I was playing, old age huff and puff hockey still. And the rink times were 11 o'clock at night till 1 in the morning or 5 a.m. And then, going to work and having a young family, it's tough to do that. But the other part about it was you got these guys, it's an over 40 league, and you got these guys, they couldn't find enough to make the team, and they're throwing 20, 25-year-old guys on it. And those guys still think they're going to be in the NHL, and they hack you, they pull your skates out from under you on a breakaway, little stupid things that can get you hurt. And I had a job. I couldn't risk getting hurt playing, old age hockey,
yeah.
So I just said, you know what, I'm going to try it. I really miss it. I was going to a lot of fights. I was going to the Forum in Los Angeles where the Lakers used to play, a local place called the Country Club, and any place I could find fights. I was going out and, having a few beers with friends and watching the fights. And the craziest story, but you know what really led me, in my opinion, was God's hand. So I had this passion for it. I didn't know where to turn to. And I promoted within the rank of the fire department, and I made captain. And the very first firehouse he put me in, believe it or not, was the same firehouse I went to as a civilian. I came out to Los Angeles. I didn't have any money. So I started, I had a friend who from Michigan, who he worked for Walmart and all these big stores. He was a buyer for them. He was such a successful guy. He broke away from them, and he was buying closeouts from all the relationships he had made with these big manufacturers. When he used to buy for Walmart and these places, he started buying from them. And he had these jogging suits, 2-piece, like you would see guys wearing now. They sold in a store for like $45 or $50 back in 1979. And the closeouts were extra small, very few medium, hardly any large, X, 2X, 3X, and 4X, because we got the junk that was left over.
Right.
So I was scratching my head. They were beautiful, but I was scratching my head. Where can I sell these things? And I said, you know what? Firemen are big guys. I'm going to go to fire stations. The very first station I ever walked into turned out, and it turned out to be the same station I got assigned to as a captain 12 years later. And here's the moral, not the moral, but the connection. The backyard of the fire station was connected to the backyard of 10 Goose Boxing that was on the other street. So I used to walk in, I used to take my radio on duty, and I'd walk across and I'd watch the Ruelas brothers, Michael Nunn, and all these great fighters sparring like all day long. And I got to meet some characters and then I used to bring the guys over with me, and I actually had the boxers come over to the firehouse. We gave them rides on the fire truck and stuff. And I realized these guys are just regular guys like I was.
Yeah.
And I decided to start pursuing it. I didn't have any connections, but I decided to start pursuing it. And 27 years later, 28 years later, whatever it is, here I am.
I mean, that does downplay a few of your accomplishments. We'll just start with that. Refereeing over 100 world and regional title fights. You are in the, what is it? Hall of Fame, the California National and West Coast Boxing Hall of Fame. So let's not just act like, oh yeah, it's this thing I do on weekends. But
You're only as good as your last fight, to be honest with you. They don't care who you are, especially now with social media. You can be beloved. You mess up a fight and the internet goes wild. But anyway, I'm sorry.
No, how do you I was going to ask about that. There is so much pressure on you as a referee to not put your thumb on the scale, to favor a fighter. And when you're doing these things, like you said, to sort of help save fighters from themselves, to keep everyone safe, to keep everything going, to make sure the judges can see what's going on so they can score the fight fairly. Uh, it seems like it's a thankless job.
Most of the time it is, but the feeling you get of knowing what you did a good job that night is a great feeling. And other times it's not thankless. Other times it's wonderful, and you get acknowledgement, and people show their love and stuff like that. But you know how you just said I've got a lot of multiple things that you got to think about in the ring. I consider myself. Let me say this: we got egotistical referees that when I ask them what career or what other profession can you make an analogy that we're like when you're in the ring? And I've had guys tell me, oh, I feel like a matador when I'm in the ring. And I shake my head. I go, no, the matador makes it all about himself. He's wearing the fancy pants.
Right.
He's making the dramatic moves. I really looked at it as that our job is that we're a conductor of an orchestra.
Mhm.
And
Oh.
yeah, people see you when you get in, people even announce your name like they do in the ring. And everybody's seeing your back. But as soon as that music starts playing, you go unnoticed unless there's a dramatic moment and you've got to do something to make the band do something. Same thing in the ring. Unless there's a dramatic moment and I have to get involved, my job is to not be seen. It's the art of being invisible while managing an extremely violent affair. And the way to do it, you got to
Or
be
you're watching
passionate
the
about it.
reset.
You got to be committed. You got to be prepared every time you get in that ring. And I have problems. Maybe you can see by my facial expressions. I have problems with people looking for their 15 minutes of fame, and they get into this profession for the wrong reasons. It's a craft, and if you don't study that craft, someone's going to die in that ring, or you're going to ruin their career. Put a black eye on boxing. And I really don't have good feelings about the phonies, the 15 minutes of fame, fly by night guys. That's just my personal passion. You really got to be committed. It's a part-time job with a full-time commitment. Just like an athlete, your family has to be committed to supporting you, because I cannot tell you, I have missed so many Christmases, so many Thanksgivings,
Mm.
so many friends, daughters and sons' weddings, dinners and get-togethers with our friends. I've missed so many in 25 years, but they all are very supportive and stuff like that, because they got a kick out of it. And I've taken them all to the fights over the years, so it's all good.
Well, and it seems, to your point, you mentioned earlier the fact that there are refs looking for their 15 minutes of fame. You mentioned the promoters not always being the most above board of people. There is always this association with boxing that the possibility of underhanded things happening seems to be a much greater specter in the background than a lot of other professional sports. Uh, I'm assuming you've had those opportunities dangled in front of you and brush them away. But again, how do you sort of help make sure the fans watching know they are seeing a clean fight, and one that, both fighters are indeed trying their hardest, and any interference or, where you step in is solely out of concerns for safety and not a payday for any person, 20 minutes after the fight?
You've asked a multitude of questions. First, I'd
Yeah,
like to
sorry about that. Yeah.
about the sport itself. Okay.
Hmm.
Uh, yes, back in the day, the mafia, controlled boxing, and there was, all kinds of payoffs for guys throwing fights and stuff like that. But that was the old days, and it's extremely hard to do something like that now because of technology. In the old days, when I wanted to see the result of a fight, if I didn't see it on TV or live, I had to look in the newspaper to see if there's any clips on who won and who lost, or wait for Ring Magazine to come out once a month to know the results. Now the results are on YouTube before I step out of the ring. There's 7 or 8 cameras flying overhead. It's much more difficult for anybody to do anything like that as well as same thing with the promoters. There's so many more regulations that make it harder for, you know, that kind of stuff to go on. I think what we have now, what you see now when it's a mismatch, it's more of incompetence, and it's usually on the smaller shows where the guy's scraping by to put this promotion together, a club show, we call them. It's just, you know, a 500-600 seat ballroom that they put a ring in, and they showcase the local fighters. The local fighters, you might not notice, sometimes they have to sell tickets so they can get paid and
Right.
stuff like that. So we have a lot of incompetence and a lot of just less experience with those kind of promoters. So it's tougher fights to do. It's the training ground for a referee. It's great. It's also the training ground for the up and coming fighters. But there's where you'll see gross mismatches and some stuff that went on that might make you think it's fixed. Now, talking about fixed fights. So one of the problems we have in the whole sport of all competitive sports is the fact that they're like in the NFL, Major League Baseball, NHL, there's one entry door. If I want to be a fighter or if I want to be an official, I go through their door, I follow their rules, I prove myself to them, and I get in. Where frankly, you could be someone important's nephew in Michigan, Chicago, anywhere, especially in the smaller states where there's no boxing, and you literally could be working in Home Depot. You say, hey, I like boxing to your uncle, and a week later you're judging fights. That's how bad it is. There's no regulation on how to get in. So fortunately, the cream rises to the top. We have a lot of phonies, a lot of frauds in officiating, and boxing exposes them. But unfortunately, we do have guys that put politics over performance, and they're really good hustlers, and they get themselves onto fights that they don't belong. But they get exposed. They get exposed.
Well, and I
Hopefully,
feel, yeah, hopefully sooner rather than
I hope
later.
I answered the question about how it goes today. It's mostly
Definitely.
incompetence with the mismatches, and that's when you're going to see a fighter take a dive.
Well,
Promoter
and
needs, promoter needs a fighter at 154. He gets this fighter. The worst part about it is that guy gets hurt a week before the fight. They need to get a replacement. They're scraping because there's a minimum amount of rounds you have to have before you can collect ticket money. So they're scraping not to lose their show. So they get a guy, maybe he's been retired for 2 years. He goes to himself, I'll move around for 3 rounds, take a shot and lay down. That's the kind of things that happen.
well, and this is the perfect way to segue over to Sole Arbiter, your referee school, to make sure to help train folks to be basically the best referee they can be. And this is just a 3-day program to do that.
Yes, it is by no means a certain, you can't take somebody in 3 days and make them a referee. This is to introduce, we had quite a few fans come last year just for a boxing experience. And this is to take whatever official you are, whatever referee you are, whatever level, whether you're an amateur ref thinking about becoming a pro or a pro ref, we're going to up your level. We're going to explain things to you from experience of over 3,000 fights between myself, Russell Mora, Tom Taylor, and Ed Calantes. Together, we've had over 3,000 fights, probably 400 world title bouts, maybe even more. And it's like anything else. You could do the trial and error program, and it'll take you 25 years, or you can learn from the things that have happened to us. And the class exposes people to the low frequency, high risk situations that come up and gives you solutions with the best recommendations. We'll give you multiple solutions in a situation, and we'll give what we feel our best recommendation is. And another thing is, a lot of referees, they look at boxing like this, it's 2 guys in front of you. We take a global approach to this. You gotta try to do what's best for boxing in situations when it's a gray area. You gotta consider the shareholders. The best example I can give you is, well, the shareholders are everybody I spoke about, the promoters, the matchmakers, the writers, the commentators, everybody who's leaving their home that has a vested interest, fans as well, in this event, You gotta try to protect everybody to let the fight go to its natural conclusion as best as possible without letting one of the fighters get seriously hurt. So sometimes, I'll give you a great example. Great fight, fighter A is winning. In fact, let me ask you guys something. Have you ever seen the Meldrick Taylor, Julio Cesar Chavez fight? Are you familiar with that?
I don't believe so, but I'm going to be going to YouTube as soon as we hang up here.
Julio Cesar Chavez, I don't got to tell you who he is, the greatest Mexican fighter in history, one of the greatest fighters in history. He was losing the fight for 11 and a half rounds. He came out knowing, I got to take this guy off his feet. And he started touching him a little bit in the 11th round, but in the 12th round, he came out like a ton of bricks. And about 30 seconds, 25, 30 seconds left in the fight, he dropped Meldrick Taylor hard. Meldrick got up, he dropped him again. And there was 1 second, after a second knockdown, there was 1 second left on the clock as the referee was giving him the mandatory 8 count after the knockdown. And Meldrick, instead of paying attention to the referee, he was focused on his corner because he was concussed and he was tired, he was fatigued and concussed. And he was paying attention to his corner and he wasn't responding to the ref. And the referee waved off the fight with 1 second left in the bout. And it was, people were saying it's a fix and people were saying all this stuff. And the referees explained it 1,000 times of why he did what he did. You can't blame the guy. One of the things he said is, I'm not paying attention to the clock. I'm paying attention to this guy. If I let this guy go, can he intelligently defend himself? The answer was clearly no. But the new boxing, the global approach to boxing, in a situation like that, and I've been in it and I've made the same mistake. I stopped the fight like that as well, because the fighter who hurt the other guy, I felt he deserved the win. If this was a street fight, who would you think won? He dropped this guy. This guy couldn't walk, hardly walk. There was 1 second left. Who deserved the win?
Right.
The other side of the coin is, what's best for boxing? You know, if you kill this guy who won these 10 or 11 rounds with 1 second left, or do you do what's best for boxing? He's on his feet. You know he's not going to take another punch, because as soon as you say box, the bell rings, the fight's over. Do you let him finish because he's made it to his feet? Do you give him the credit to let him finish? And then they have a rematch for twice the amount of money and they both make money and it's better for boxing? Or do you wave it off? And then it's terribly controversial.
Well, and that's the thing. I feel like there's, I don't know, how do you stay so not impartial, but like you want to consider these things. You obviously have the health and safety of the fighters. For somebody, for folks who think that this is a brutal sport, and it can be very difficult, but there is an art and there is a skill and a grace to it that, yeah. And when you see a good fight that is between two equally matched fighters, it can be this great exhilarating thing to see
Unbelievable.
These two athletes really push to their limits. How often does that sort of, obviously calling a match 1 second left does not happen every night, but how often do you see these things where you kind of upon reflection go, I could have completely changed that night, and or the sort of like, this isn't a decision that will change everything and I need to make sure I get it right without any question.
Low frequency, high risk.
Well, and sometimes in the moment, like, because I also come at it from the PR perspective, because I also do a lot in that world professionally, because sometimes which way is what's best for boxing? Because on the one hand, it's best for boxing, and if I go this way, but on the other hand, I could change the course of what's best for boxing, and it still could be what's best for boxing. Not necessarily that particular scenario. So which way is right? So then you've got the moral dilemma plus the promotional dilemma plus the moral and promotional dilemma. Like, how do you make those decisions in that 1 second?
So I try to pride myself on being in the moment. I do a lot of preparation. I'm committed to boxing. I love it. It's like I call it my mistress. My wife laughs because it takes me away from my family so much, and I have such passion for it, as well as other guys do too. And you got to be in the moment, and you have to practice these things, consider these things, and really know what you're looking at. Like I was a fireman 31 years. I was an EMT. I'm fortunate. I was the commander of a paramedic engine company for 19 years. I've gone through a lot of trauma. I'm comfortable with
Yeah.
trauma. So I understand a concussion, and I know what the signs and symptoms of a concussion and what I'm looking for. And I'm constantly, every moment in the fight, watching the progression of damage. Before the fight starts, I draw a mental baseline on both fighters, what's normal for them. And as the fight goes on, I watch them fall, damage and fatigue fall away from that baseline. So it's not swag, stupid wild ass guess. It's
Right.
I'm watching, you do the best you can, you give it your all, and you try to do what's best. But listen, sometimes, let me just say this. I've had over 1,100 fights professional as a ref. And I can't lie to you, I've made mistakes. Things have happened where I go, there's about a dozen fights, just say, that I wish I could do it over again and say something different, but done something different, but you can't go back. But what it taught me was that when the moments come up, I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be in the moment. I'm going to be considering everything that's going on, and try to make the right call. And I'll give you a great example. Are you guys familiar with the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder bout?
Mhm.
Okay. So I was the ref of the first one, and Tyson Fury got dropped by Wilder with two beautiful shots in the 12th round and went down hard.
Mhm.
And I was doing what I was taught to do and what I was looking at, and it was an exciting fight, but I was in the moment, every single moment, keeping a record in my head of where everybody was at. Everybody thought he was unconscious. I knew he wasn't unconscious because I watched where the shots landed. I watched what his body language, how he took the shots, how he fell, how he landed, and what he was doing when he was on the ground. Nobody else did. Everybody swears because they were drinking beer and jumping up, and it caught him off guard. But everybody swears he was unconscious and his eyes were closed. That's just not true. And I could show you pictures and videos where he wasn't. The biggest thing was from instinctually and from being an EMT, when he went down, I never took my eyes off him. I pointed down, through training, and I just stayed on him to watch how he went down. Pointed Wilder to the neutral corner, and what I noticed when he was down was his right leg was up. He was resting his foot on the bottom of his foot. If he was unconscious, those legs would have been down. There would have been no movement. The other thing I saw was he was squeezing his gloves when he was laying there.
Mm.
So I looked at the timekeeper, got the count. I thought he could have been, not able to continue. So instead of audibly saying 2, 3, I just kept quiet, did it in my head. And when I got close to him, his eyes were open. They weren't open all the way. They were like this, looking up at the ceiling. And when he saw me, he immediately transferred his eyes to me. He wasn't out. He knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And when I got to 6, he rolled over and got up and beat the clock. So there's people, this is what I was going to, there's people in this sport that thought it was a very good decision that I had made. And there's other people that on the internet, and it's still going on. They said I gave him a long count. They said I let a guy who was unconscious get up. It comes with it. So even when you make the right decision, there's going to be hell to pay in this sport because of social media. Baseball umpires too. Football. Look what's going on with football now? They're showing things of Mahomes where there was an offside and they let the play go. It's always something. It's the world we live in today.
Well, and it seems like given your day job, EMT firefighter, those careers very much work best or are aided when you're able to keep a level head, keep calm, and not let the situation overtake you personally. So you can do the best thing to address the situation in front of you. And clearly, boxing is part of that. Like, I need to remain neutral, I need to remain calm. And like you said, I need to watch this guy. And you knew exactly the steps you needed to do to make sure that this guy wasn't unconscious, that this what like paying attention to all the little signs to make sure you made the right call. Apart from your career and your training in as an EMT and as a firefighter, are there other careers where you're like, when someone says, "Oh, I do this," do you go, "Oh, you'd probably be a very good referee because you have that ability to just focus and stay present"?
Absolutely. I got to tell you, the best men and women that we have in this sport, as far as officials, come from the police, military, or fire background, or a background like you're talking about, where you've got to make you have to use critical thinking, and you have to make decision making under a lot of stress. So it just seemed, and a lot of people from the police, fire, and military gravitate towards this sport as officials. They start as inspectors and they go forth and stuff like that. But I don't care who you are, police, fire, or military, if you don't prepare and you don't have standards and an understanding of every situation that could possibly come up, you're going to fail. It's just like, for me, being a firefighter, we would drive through our district for the whole 31 years I was on the job, and we coming back from a false alarm or coming back from a medical run. Part of the training was stopping that rig and saying, okay, here's this 200 by 400-foot commercial building. It's on fire. Everybody jump off. The fire is in the southwest corner. Everybody jump off. Tell me where you're going to ladder it. Tell me where we make an entry. Let's talk about, look at the door on this thing with the locks. How are we getting through there? And even on, like, if I was the captain, they would say to me, okay, Cap, what are you calling for as your initial assignment to come back us up? Where, because I would have to ask for resources and place those resources. So we were going through this stuff because at 3 o'clock in the morning, when you had to do it, you couldn't say, you couldn't stand there and hesitate.
Right.
So in fact, I want to just throw something at you guys. With officials, we all make mistakes. We all, miss a call or something like that. It's normal. It's human. But if you want to see a referee that shouldn't be doing what they're doing, it's the guys that freeze and look like a deer in the headlight, and they just gloss over and they don't know what to do, and they end up going back to what they were trained in. And like an amateur ref, I see a lot of guys where they think it was a knockdown, they're not sure if it was a knockdown or not, and they just glossed over it, they wave it off, and they keep going. But they're like a deer in the headlight for like 3 seconds, and they gloss over. The best way to explain it, where a good ref is going to be very definitive. The definitive referees are the ones that are in the moment, know what they're looking at, study the game, student of the games, and the ones that are more successful.
For more information on Jack and his boxing referee training school, check out his website, Sole, S-O-L-E, Arbiter, ARBITER.com.
Why the Podcast is produced by the Professional Production Company. Please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts because we're shallow and need constant validation. For more information, you can check out our website, whythepodcast.com. And like everyone else, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Today's show was recorded and produced by Heidi Hedquist and myself from our world headquarters located on the second floor of the professional office building, centrally located downtown. Our reluctant executive producers are John Sauvé and Sandy Stone. Our willing producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our intern is Zach Jackson. This one's for Philippe. Thanks for joining us. Flash, we're coming home.
Nigel, is that you? Are you here, Nigel?